In this video series, I'm going to go over some alternatives that you can use since Windows XP support has ended. Now, it is a very bad idea to continue using Windows XP when it's not supported anymore. Windows sends out the malicious software tool and they block a lot of bad things that can happen. And they do that on systems that they support, and they're not doing that anymore on Windows XP. So you need to do something else. Now, of course, you can upgrade to a newer version of Windows if you want, but there are some free alternatives. Now, if you're just doing things like web browsing, checking your email, and basic things, documents, and things like that, there's an easy and free alternative, and that is to use Linux. Now, don't panic. We're not talking about a version of Linux that's going to be difficult to use. It's actually going to look almost exactly the same as Windows XP with a start button and a familiar interface, desktop, and everything else. You will be able to use it just like Windows XP. You won't really see much of a difference. The programs you use will be different. But for instance, if you're using OpenOffice on Windows, you can use that on Linux. Okay, so it's not that difficult to make the transition. Now, when I say you're just doing basic things, I mean that you're not a power user. You're just an everyday person that likes to surf the internet, do their online banking, and whatever you like to do. Look at your photos, upload your photos. It'll do all of that for you with no real learning curve. You're just going to have a little bit different looking software. Now, it is also for power users, especially for power users, more so than Windows. Okay, so let's just continue now. There are some versions of Linux that you can use right out of the box and just install them. One of them is called Mint. Okay, so I'm going to just bring up a window that has Linux Mint in it. Okay, so I'm running this in a window so that I can show you what it looks like. So it's a little bit reduced here. Let me just roll down. So this is your desktop, and you can put things on the desktop. You can, if you right click on the desktop, you can do different things. Just like before, you change your desktop background and it brings up a window, bring up your backgrounds, your themes, your fonts. So it's very familiar. Let me just roll down a little bit here to get the rest of the screen in. At the bottom, you have a menu button. You click on that, brings up the familiar looking menu system. Okay, and then you have your programs over here. So it's very similar. It's easy to use, and you can install the programs you want on it as well. There's a store where you can go and get your programs. Okay, so I don't want to spend too much time on this. I just wanted to show you this as an alternative. The problem with some of these Linux versions is if you have an older computer, sometimes they have a problem with your monitor, and sometimes they have a problem with your wireless network. So I'm going to show you another alternative that I like to use. I've used it on a computer that is from 2004 and it runs just perfectly, as well as a computer that's 4 years old and on a brand new computer. So it works across the board. You get a similar type of interface as Windows XP, and it works very well. It's very quick on older computers as well. Okay, so let's get rid of this one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to install two different parts. One is Ubuntu, which is a very common and well-known and widely used version of Linux. And on top of that, we're going to put a layer that turns it into something that is very similar to Windows XP, makes it extremely functional with almost no learning curve to get going. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is create and install media. So we're going to go to the website. We'll download the version that we want. Okay, so we'll go to ubuntu.com and we're going to want the desktop version. Okay, so we can get Ubuntu now. Choose your flavor here, 64-bit or 32-bit or 64-bit Mac. Okay, I'm going to download the 32-bit. A lot of older systems are going to be 32-bit, so check which one you need. Okay, and then you can just click download here. And then you have the option of donating. You can do that if you want. It's only $16 to support them, or you can change it here. Or you can say no, take me to the download, and then you can just download the file. Okay, now you need to create and install media, either a DVD or you can use a bootable USB stick. You're going to have to change in the BIOS of your computer where it's going to boot from first. So make sure the hard disk is underneath either the DVD drive or the USB stick. I'm going to be using a USB stick. So you can download a program called Rufus, and it makes making a bootable USB stick very simple. Okay, so here is my Ubuntu download, and I have downloaded Rufus here. So just it brings up a little window like this. Now, it's going to find the USB stick here, and you'll get a list of them if you have more than one. Now, if you have a newer computer, you'll have something called UEFI, UEFI, which is different than the BIOS. If you have UEFI, you have to get at it a little different to get into the changer settings. So it's a good idea to set this to a partition for BIOS or UEFI if you're not sure which you're using. Okay, we can leave it at FAT32. We don't really have to change any of this. But what we want to do is go down, make sure that you have these three boxes checked. And then it says create a bootable disk using, and we're going to click here and click ISO image. Okay, then click this little box. Okay, and here's our Ubuntu. So click on that and open. And click start. Okay, now it's going to go through and create a bootable USB drive for us. Okay, so this is complete now. So all we have to do is put that into the DVD drive, or if you're using the USB stick, into the USB drive and boot the computer. Now you can do this safely. You can try it out before you install it. So you can put this in there and boot and give it a try, and then you can install it over top if you want, or alongside. But the idea is to replace Windows XP, so we're going to go right over top. Okay, so now in the next video, we're going to go through the install process. Okay, in this video, we're going to go through the install process. So we're going to take it from when you reboot your machine and it starts into the install. I'm running this in a virtual machine using VirtualBox so that I can record the process. Okay, so let's start it up here. Okay, so you can see we got the splash screen starting here. Okay, so here's what I was saying here. You select your language, and then you can either try it, so that won't hurt anything on your computer, just let you give it a go, or you can install it. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and do install. Now remember, if you do install, it's going to overwrite Windows XP or whatever it is you have on your computer. Okay, next, it's going to tell you how much disk space you need. You need to be plugged into a power source, and usually this is going to be unchecked because you won't have a connection to the internet when you're doing a fresh install. Since I'm running it in VirtualBox, it's seeing it there, and I could download the update if I want here. Can install third-party software here. I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's click continue. Okay, so next it's giving you some options here. So it's telling you it's going to erase it. You can also encrypt it. You can use LVM that's going to help you with the logical drives, or you can do something else. I'm just going to leave it at the default. Click install now. Okay, next it's going to ask you for your location. So you just click the region that you are in, and then we'll click continue. Okay, next you pick your language and your keyboard. Continue. Okay, next you need to put in your information. So your name, Okay, and it gives you a name for your computer now. So on the network, this would be what it would look like. Your username here, password. Okay, and then require my password or log me in automatically. I'm just going to go log me in automatically. You can choose what you want to do there. Continue. Okay, so now it goes through and it copies the files. There's a little slideshow that you can go through here. Tells you about it. While you're waiting, you can go see the different features here. Now remember, we're not going to be using Ubuntu like you see it here. It's still quite complex. For instance, you can't actually put an icon on the desktop without running a command in a terminal, so that's no good. We're going to want to put a nice friendly desktop on it so that it looks like Windows XP and acts like Windows XP. But first step is to get Ubuntu installed. Okay, so we'll just let this run now. Now I should mention also that there's a version of this called Lubuntu with an L on the front that does all of this all at once. However, the problem is that it installs a light version of Ubuntu under the desktop. And again, there are problems with some wireless networks and some monitors. So that's why we're going to do a full install of Ubuntu and then put the desktop on top of it. Okay, now if you want, you can try and install Lubuntu, and you just go to do a search and download Lubuntu instead of Ubuntu. It's really the same process you're seeing now. However, once you get it installed, you may find that it's not working for you. You're not getting your wireless networks, or your monitor's going black. So that's why we are going to do it this way, and I suggest you do it this way as well. As well, you get the full Ubuntu store of software when you do it this way as well. Okay, and we're continuing along here. Now it's installing the system. Okay, so now it's going to configure the hardware. Okay, so once it's complete, you're going to get this message, and what you want to do is just go ahead and restart. Okay, and then once you boot back up, you will have Ubuntu installed. And here's what it looks like here. Now, this is only the first step. What you want to do now is make sure that you have an internet connection. Now up here, you'll see where you can connect to the internet. Usually there's a little thing up here, and then you're going to go and find your connections. So a wired connection. You'll see a internet connection or a wireless connection up here as well on your computer if you have a wireless network. Mine right now is just going through the Ethernet because it's in a VirtualBox. But what you need to do at any rate is get connected up to your internet connection, your wireless or your wired network, however you're going to do it, and then you're ready to go. Okay, so we have the first part done, which is installing Ubuntu. Now we need to get the LXDE desktop installed. The LXDE desktop is what does it for us. You'll see here's some images here. It looks a lot like Windows XP and acts a lot like Windows XP. So what we need to do is put that over top of it. Now, fortunately, you can do it right from inside here. We're going to get to that in the next video, as well as a run through of how it works. Okay, now that we have Ubuntu installed, we need to install the LXDE desktop. And we can do that from a terminal window. So all you have to do is hit Control Alt and T, and that'll bring up a terminal window. Okay, so here it is. Now, you need to just put a simple command in here. The command isn't going to make any sense to you unless you know Linux, and it doesn't need to. Okay, so here's the command you put in. Okay, so the command is sudo space apt-get install, and space install space Ubuntu desktop. Okay, and once you've got that command in there, just hit the enter key. It's going to ask you for your password. Okay, and there it goes. So now it's going to run a whole series of commands, and it's going to ask you some questions. First of all, about installing each piece. It'll ask you if you want to continue. So just say yes to each of those. And this is going to take a while. So just let this run, and when it's done, we'll have the desktop installed. Okay, so now it's finished. You'll see that it'll come down to a command line again when it's done. Okay, so what you want to do now is reboot the system. So up here, you click on this, and then you can shut down, and then you can log back in. So I'm going to shut her down, and then I'm going to restart it. Okay, so now we're in the restart process here. Okay, and then when we sign back in, we are in the new desktop. Okay, now we're going to go over some basic functions. Okay, so down here you have your start button and your preferences. Okay, just your system tools. Okay, and then sound and video, office, internet. Okay, so you'll see here we have Firefox browser. Now if we right click on this, we can add it to the desktop. Okay, so we can start building our desktop. So there's our Firefox web browser up here now. Okay, and if we right click in our desktop, we can set our desktop preferences. Let's go to here and we can change our wallpapers. Now these are just some of the ones that came with it, but you can pick which ones you want. See a previews over here, so let's click that one. Okay, and then you can also change your icon packs and some other things here. Okay, let's close. Okay, so now we have a desktop with an image on it. You can use your own images as well. Okay, so as you can see here, it works a lot like Windows XP did. Okay, here's your accessories. Okay, there's some different options on here. Here's Office, so you can use the LibreOffice, which is the built-in Office here, but you could also open up your web browser here. Let's open up Firefox. And then we could go to openoffice.org, for instance. And then we could download the Linux version of OpenOffice and install it right here in Lubuntu. Now another thing I want to show you is the Lubuntu Software Center. So let's go into System Tools and then Lubuntu Software Center. So Lubuntu has its own software center that you can download different pieces of software. Okay, so you can go into categories, say games. And then you could install any of the software you want here. Okay, so add to the app basket. Okay, and this shows us our apps in the basket, and then we can install the packages. Okay, I'm not going to do this, but let's close this. And then back in here, we also have the Ubuntu Software Center since we installed a full version of Ubuntu as well. So this is a much bigger software center. So between the two of them, you can get quite a lot of the things that you're going to want. Okay, so here is the Ubuntu Software Center now. Okay, so that gives you more choices there. Okay, now you also have in here your Thunderbird mail. That's going to be up in Internet. So you have a mail client here that you can use to look after all your emails as well. Okay, so basically it works a lot like Windows XP does. You can build your desktop the way you like it up here. You can do everything with your desktop. You don't need to know anything about command lines. We just use that one command to get this installed. Okay, now a couple things you should know here. First of all, let's go into Preferences, and then let's go to Software and Updates. This is where you can set up when the software gets updated and what software gets updated. So it'll do it all automatically for you. Okay, so the defaults are usually what you want here, but it'll just show you what it's going to download. And then it'll pick the server down here based on your region. If it isn't right, you can go into the drop-down block here and pick a different one. Okay, other software. So again, it's going to pick the software that it wants to update, and this will be based on things that you already have installed. Okay, updates, the type the updates from, important security updates, recommended updates, and unsupported updates. You can have this one on or off. So you can pick here what you want. Now automatically check daily when they are updated, display immediately. Okay, so you can set these the way you want it as well. Okay, and then authentication, this is just some keys here. Okay, and then if there's any drivers that you need, if you have any equipment installed, it'll go through and see if you need any drivers. Okay, so basically that's already going to be set up by default for you, so you don't have to do anything. But if you want to change it, you can. Okay, so now if we go up to System Tools now, okay, and then you see here we have software updates. So this is where you can install them manually. It'll check, and then it'll give you a chance to install them once it's done checking. Okay, so as you can see, it's starting to check now. Okay, and as you can see, the software is up to date. However, if it needed an update, it would tell you there and it would give you a chance to update it. Okay, so those are the basics. Really, you just have to play around a little bit. It is not much different from using Windows when you have it this way. Okay, so there you go. You now know how you can replace Windows XP using a combination of Ubuntu and the LXDE desktop.